Hi there. I suppose the answer is that if I'm not feeling very spiritual at the moment, or feeling that I have actually failed in spiritual development on any level, it's probably because I've recognized that I've been for the last 40 years embroiled in false spirituality, in the spirituality that's represented by this sigil and by the various characteristics of this so-called false spirituality. Um, but some of them you might not even argue are spiritual. Then there lies the rub. They seem spiritual, but in fact they belong to the Demiurge. They are totally material. It's what they call materialistic spiritualism or spiritual materialism, you know. And so I mean moralism, self-loathing, the sort of moralism that divides a person from himself. You know, certainly that's one of the isms. Um, and then there's the well, I still say Hermeticism. I know people are going to say, "Come on, there's a bit of Hermeticism." You know, there are techniques that Gnostics learn about to recover a sense of self from which a Gnostic experience might arise. But I think a lot of it's mumbo jumbo, to be frank. Um, Maybe I have such little self worth that I can't ever believe that I'll ever get better as an individual, as a human being. So I don't really have much or any faith in the methods of self improvement because I'm just too far down on the totem pole really to ever go up it, you know. Um, Activism, under all this, I would include environmentalism and all the pseudo spirituality of believing that the earth is our mother and there's some kind of spirituality attached to this planet. And world savage and planet savage is some kind of spirituality in itself. And social justice warriors and the whole activist and rights and culture of entitlement and the whole kit and caboodle of it, of another false spirituality. Futurism. Yeah, this has become almost a religion, isn't it? That technology is the answer to our problems. That AI and robots and computers and are going to replace the human being, and social media and virtual worlds are going to replace what it is to be human. That's almost a religion, a false spirituality right there. And lastly, psychism, the whole New Age crystal balderdash, spiritism, all the isms attached to the New Age, and all the gobbledygook mumbo jumbo associated with all that, which is related to self improvement. So that's a sort of branch of Hermeticism, modern Hermeticism, I suppose. And then all the gobbledygook linked to activism and futurism. And there's plenty of other isms I could have included in this negative sigil for the Demiurge. And where does this leave Gnosticism? I think faith has a lot to do with it. I think Gnosticism is about faith. And as I said, don't call us, we'll call you, sort of thing. So, you're going into spontaneous introspection, like the Quakers do, and you are, waiting for the Holy Spirit to come if it does. And if not, well, it's all right as well. And you just accept what is and what is not, as far as receiving Gnosis is concerned. And perhaps the greatest Gnosis is realizing that futurism, romanticism, activism, Hermeticism. Um, well, Hermeticism is part of the Romantic view. The Romantic movement actually started in the 19th century, and it's all the Constable and Turner. It's the Romantic music, the worship of nature. It all started in the 19th century, and it's all complete mumbo jumbo and gobbledygook, really. That nature is this wonderful, wonderful sort of Tennyson poem. So that's all part of the kind of fantasy world that we all build around ourselves. Instead of looking at the transcendental reality, which is not escapism, which is not fantasy, it's just the opposite, really. So I think Gnosticism, as it says here, transcends this sigil. This sigils of the Demiurge, and if there is something other and something greater than ourselves, then it's also something incredibly subtler than ourselves. That's for sure. And it's something that is not anything part of psychism, hermeticism, romanticism, futurism, activism, and moralism. It's something which just transcends all these qualities and more. And you'll see it when you see it. You'll know it when you see it. You'll know it. You'll have knowledge of when you experience something which is really transcendental and not a deception of the demiurge. Because all these things are distractions, activism and environmentalism, romanticism. They're all Gothicism. They're all isms. Most of the isms are distraction from your introspection, from your seeking. And maybe what you seek then will be very, very mundane, and it won't be exciting or romantic, and you'll kind of feel a bit cheated. Do you know what I mean? Feel a bit disappointed, I suppose. It is also that mundane and in your face, straight in your face, and nothing mysterious and mumbo jumbly about it. You will realize that God is closer to a man than his jugular vein, as it says in the Quran. I mean, you'll understand that in no uncertain terms. And it won't be ghosts and psychics and chakras and crystals and energies and auras and all the stuff that floats about the place, which is all I've been embroiled on this for decades, and I'm totally disillusioned with it because it put me in a fantasy world. It made me impractical. It made me disintegrate. It made me divide myself against myself. It made me go away with the fairies on one hand, and a rejection of the practicalities of life on the other. And I'm a black sheep of the family. I mean, it shows. I'm not integrated with society. And it's not even a matter of being in the world but not of the world. I'm not in the world. I'm away with the fairies. I'm away with futurism, psychism, romanticism, and activism. I've been, making the world a better place. Utopianism. I might also include under environmentalism and ideology, and the total lack of practical energy which goes with every ideology you've ever come across, as you try and make the world fit into your ideological view. Like squaring the circle, bashing a square peg into a round socket. It isn't going to happen. You're just going to destroy the peg, aren't you? You're going to destroy yourself and other people around you. So I've got a lot to be mea culpa maxima. I am at fault. And the only way is to steer past all these extremes of thinking. All this black and white thinking, and perhaps this is black and white thinking on my part to so divide the world up into things which you should reject, like psychism on one hand, and say there's Gnosticism on the other. I mean, maybe that's black and white thinking, dualistic thinking itself. So it's subtle. That's what I'm saying. Is what I'm talking about is kind of subtle, and maybe I take all my psychic books, and I take all my Crowley books, and I take all my Hermetic books and Golden Dawn books and magic books, and I bury them in the earth. I throw them in the sea. I tear them up and throw them to the four winds. I set fire to them. I should have done that many, many years ago. I not hold on to all this stuff, which I'm not even committed to anyway. So I fall between two stools because on one hand, I'm not away with the fairies enough, like a lot of people that I've met in the New Age movement, and yet I'm sort of not cynical enough to have basically transcended all the rubbish that I've seen around me for decades. I've still been fascinated or enthralled by it. So anyway, but now is now, here and now. This is day zero, and I could just now go into quietism and go into introspection and go in and ponder the various texts of Gnosticism, and consider the traps of the Demiurge, which are many and varied, and reject all the traps, and while seeking a way out, an exit in terms of consciousness from this world, while still, as Rudolf Steiner would recommend, being a practical person and developing my practical energy, building my practical energy, if you like, becoming physically fit, doing my gardening, relating to other human beings instead of cutting myself off from everybody, being pro-social instead of anti-social, and being conformist rather than rebellious, like a rebel without a cause sort of thing, and seeking going within instead of going without all the time. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose this is a kind of extension of my usual weekly confession, and I thought I had to elaborate on the last confessio, because a lot of people will be scratching their heads thinking, what on earth is going on here? What do you mean you reject all spirituality? Well, perhaps what I really mean is I reject false spirituality, and I accept the truth of Gnosis instead.